This is County Executive Steve Shue. You're listening to the Maryland Crabs Podcast.
Live from a grungy kitchen table located in Annapolis, Maryland's scenic and historic capital, it's the Maryland Crabs Podcast. With each episode, your hosts, Tim Hamilton, John Frenay, and the occasional guest will dive in and pick apart the stuff that really matters most to you. We're too lazy to actually solve any of these problems, but we can definitely stir the pot. From schools, politics, parking in the fire lane, to those horrible people who drive BMWs. And here with this week's episode, live from the kitchen table, Tim Hamilton and John Frenay.
Hey there, this is the Maryland Crabs Podcast, and we are back again for another episode because that must mean it's Thursday, right, Tim?
It is Thursday. Not really.
Oh, man.
Tearing down that fourth wall. I wish it was Thursday. Hey, we're supposed to be getting a ton of rain on Thursday. So if you're listening to this on Thursday and there's a ton of rain, I predicted it.
What's that, from Hurricane Michael?
Yeah, it's moving really fast. They said we can get anywhere between like 1 and 6 inches, something like that.
Oh, wonderful.
That's the first day of boat show.
That's right. Well, we did the episode last week with the boat show.
Oh, yeah.
And that was fun. I like talking with Paul. I like finding out what they do and everything else. They've got they did it for the sailboat show, and they've got another one coming up this week. It starts, actually today is the VIP day. So if you're a VIP, you can go on down there. If you're media, you can go down there, but you can't go if you're just like a commoner, you have to wait till tomorrow. But that's the powerboat show that comes into town.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the sailboat show.
No.
No,
Why?
I'm not a sailboat guy. Someone told me once, one of my neighbors, he wanted to take me out. He goes, when you're on a sailboat, 2 knots seems exciting. So we went out and it did not seem exciting. I'm like, can we just go faster? Don't you have an engine on this? Let's just go.
I'm not a big sailboater myself.
Because 3 guys, what happened last week? 3 guys jumped the fence and they were running around the boat show.
I think they were drunk and just,
I don't think anyone sober would jump a fence into a sailboat show.
That's true.
I certainly wouldn't.
I would love to have seen the look on their face when they realized that, oh shit, there's somebody sleeping on the boat.
Yeah, they got ejected from the boat. I looked at these guys, and they're just like these goofs staring back in their mugshots. It's like, what the? They sobered up. They're like, we did what? So it was Friday, and they was doing some work at my house because our basement flooded. I don't want to talk about it.
Right.
And my daughter and I, we had a couple hours to kill. It was probably about 3:30 or 4. So I said, well, why don't we go down to the market house, and I'll get you some fries, and I'll get a couple beers, and we'll just sit there. And so we go through Eastport, and we get to the bridge, and the bridge is up, so it's backed up. And then the bridge goes down and we start to crawl over and up on the bridge. And I'm like, oh, shit, it's the boat show. So I thought there's no way we're going to get parking. So what I thought I'd do is go down to St. Mary's Street, go up and come down to Gloucester, or go back on the bridge and go over to Eastport somewhere,
right.
In Davis's. So I get onto St. Mary's Street and go up to Duke of Gloucester, but they are backed way the hell up. So I thought, well, I'll be smart. I'll turn around right here in St. Mary's and go back down to Compromise and take a right and go over the bridge. So right when I do that, I'm behind 2 or 3 cars, but a school bus was there right across from the Marriott or whatever the hell it is now. And it was a shuttle, but it was a full-size school bus.
Right.
And so you have all these Sperry people coming off the bus, and there's a ton of them. And they're all older because it's sailboat. So they're kind of shuffling off the bus. And there's this huge line of Sperry's who are looking to get onto the bus. So I'm looking at this going, this is going to be a 10 or 15 minute thing. So meanwhile, the cars are backing up behind us and they're backing up Duke of Gloucester, and it's going to be a 10-minute ordeal. So I kind of edge out just to look around the school bus, and the guy in front of me, he sees what I'm doing and he's like, oh, this guy's got a good idea. So he goes around the school bus and I jump behind him. So now we're on the left side of the street. So we're illegally doing this.
Okay.
So we get down there, and one of the APD cops, he just looks at us and he just rolls his eyes. He's like, oh, morons. So he comes and he points a finger at the guy in front of me, and he's jabbering at him. So I know I'm about to get spanked. So I have to sit there and just say, I'm getting a ticket. And I never get tickets, by the way.
All right.
So
that's what I hear.
Yeah, I don't get tickets. So my daughter's next to me. She goes, you're getting a ticket for this one for sure. I'm like, no.
Hey, anybody from APD or Anne Arundel County, look for a black Acura.
They won't do it because I'm too charming. I'll flirt my way out of it. So he comes up and he goes, what side do we drive on in this state? And I'm like, the right. And he goes, what side are you on? I'm like, the left. And he goes, I could give you a ticket right now. And my daughter I can tell she's vibrating because she wants me badly to get a ticket.
Yeah.
And he goes, but I'm not gonna. Get out of here.
See what you should have done? She says, well, mate, it's just like in freaking Australia, man. We drive on.
I should have pulled
haven't you heard? We got a goddamn Aussie as a mayor. We're on the right.
I should have pulled the old I pay your salary. They love that. You're right. Go ahead.
Works every time.
But he was just, he looks like he'd had it too. He was just done with the boat show. He was done with idiots like me.
Before it even started.
Yeah, and he was dunsies.
Well, your streak remains unblemished. Yeah. Well, hey, let's get into the episode this week. And I sat down with Wes Adams in the basement of I would say the Maryland Inn, but it's
the old Starbucks, right?
The former Starbucks.
I like that place.
Not Treaty of Paris, but King of France Tavern. Where that
you guys sounded great in there too. We got to do more podcasts.
I know. I got to see if we can maybe. I'd love to rent that little nook out. That'd be great. But sat down with Wes Adams, who is the Arundel County State's Attorney, and I do know that he is in an election campaign. But the deal that we had him on, and it's been planned for quite some time, was that no politicking,
and it wasn't.
And that was really because I didn't want to get into the politics or the campaigns or anything like that. But I had a real question after we talked to him about a year and a half or 2 years ago. As you saw Wes get into the safe stations, and I've seen stuff about drug court and everything else. And I really sort of wanted to find out what is involved in the state's attorney's office.
I didn't know any of that stuff.
And I think that a lot of it actually, without getting politicky, will help people make a better choice when it comes time to vote for that office, which is up for election on November 6th. Just to see, what's involved in running that office.
I texted you while I was editing it, and I said, this is actually pretty interesting. I said, because it was like an ELI5. And for those of you who don't know, on Reddit, there's a subreddit called ELI5, which is Explain Like I'm 5, which comes from, I think, Philadelphia, The Lawyer in Philadelphia, the movie, where he said, explain like I'm 5.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So whenever you have a question about you don't understand something that everyone assumes is very basic, you say, explain it to me like I'm 5 years old. And that's kind of what this was. Oh,
hey, by the way, we're speaking of Reddit real quickly. If anybody's on Reddit, go check out the Ask Me Anything Reddit, the Capital Gazette.
Oh, it was a good one, yeah.
They had Daniel All, they had Rachel Bacella, and
can't remember who else it was.
Who was the third one on there?
I can't remember. It was about a week ago.
There was a third one on there that didn't ask me anything, and they had a bunch of people, send them in questions as to how they're dealing and everything else, and really, really very insightful. So go back to check out Reddit on the Capital Gazette and check out those guys. But I'll tell you right now, why don't we get into Wes Adams, who is our Anne Arundel County State's Attorney,
who explains like John's 5.
When you think of Watermark, you probably think of Harbor Queen. The big white boat that sits down at the end of City Dock. But did you know that Harbor Queen is much more than just a visitor attraction? That thousands of local school children take field trips aboard it every year to learn about the Chesapeake Bay and our region's history. But that's not all you don't know about Watermark. When the Susquehanna River crested, washing thousands of tons of debris into our waterways, Watermark was there, rolling up their sleeves, helping the Annapolis Harbor Master clean up Ego Alley. And when the Annapolis Police Department SWAT team needed a boat to conduct special training exercises on to help protect our waters, they called Watermark. Watermark, making our mark. To learn more about how Watermark is here for our hometown, visit watermarkjourney.com.
Here's to the teacher who spends her weekend helping children who need a little extra attention. To the soldier who missed the birth of his baby while serving overseas. To the EMT working full-time and taking night classes. To the police officers and firefighters working long hours away from their families to keep our families safe. Here's to you, our hometown heroes. I'm Alan Hyatt, Chairman and President of Severn Bank, and we know there are many heroes among us. Men and women who serve without expecting anything in return. Which is why we're honored to offer our Hometown Heroes program to educators, law enforcement officers, firefighters, first responders, healthcare workers, and military personnel. Whether you're opening a checking account or buying a new home, we're here to give back to you. Learn more about our Hometown Heroes program at severnbank.com. Severn Bank, here with you.
Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
Yeah, we are in the basement of Maryland Inn. We're down at the former Starbucks, which is now the Maryland Inn Coffee Shop, serving Starbucks coffee with State's Attorney for Anne Arundel County, Wes Adams. How are you?
Good, John. How are you today?
Good. And I am got to say that I'm really glad that we're here in Starbucks and not in like the place where you normally work. So that's that's always good.
Well, it was a little vertically challenged here for me, though, John. A lot of stooping.
All right. Big question. Big hard hitting.
Yep.
How tall are you?
Just under 6'6".
Just under 6'6". Okay, so not quite tall enough to play basketball, but probably were okay in baseball.
Not quite good enough to play basketball either.
You pitched, right?
A pitcher and a corner outfielder.
Okay.
Left and right.
Did you tell me you did minors?
I did. I played a little bit of independent league baseball. Had a chance to play a complete season into a playoffs and all the way up to a championship. My team was fortunate enough to win a championship back in 1996. Catskill Cougars. I don't want to identify myself as a Red Sox fan because, it was really cool. I played against George Scott. George Scott so I'm the New York team. I'm in pinstripes. I'm a Red Sox fan. We beat the Massachusetts Mad Dogs in the championship. They're managed by George Scott, who was, for me as a kid, was somebody that I watched growing up because my dad was a Red Sox fan. He was from Rhode Island. And so, like the first Red Sox game I ever went to in Fenway Park, George Scott hit a grand slam. And here I am, 20 years later, 18 years later, playing baseball against the team that he's managing. Just a wild experience. It's probably a great story, John. And I suppose if you think you can work it in without alienating all the Orioles fans, I'm okay with it.
The Orioles fans don't have a whole lot to be proud of this year, so it might not be a bad idea.
Well, it also sounds like I'm a bandwagon fan, but I've been a Red Sox fan since I was probably 8 or 9. I watched the collapse. I watched the Bucky Dent game on a little 13-inch black and white TV.
Do you remember a guy named Tom Bergmeyer used to pitch for them?
Yeah, long time ago.
Yeah, he lived with me for a couple summers when he was a pitching coach for the Bay Sox, and it was kind of cool. I said, okay, here's my deal. Don't drink my last beer. That's the only rules I got in the house, and let it go at that.
That's a tough rule for a baseball guy.
That's true. Well, although he was making more money than the players in the minors, though, that's for sure at the time.
Absolutely.
But how did you get from minor league ball, which was theoretically could be the start of a career, into the state's attorney's office here in Anne Arundel County?
So I was actually going to law school while I was still playing baseball. The winding tale of it is I finished college. My college coach's son-in-law worked at a law firm in Boston. I always wanted to continue with baseball, but I could not get signed by an affiliated club. I started working in the law firm, went back to law school a couple of years later. In my first year of law school, a scout that had followed me in college took over with a team called the Mountaindale Lions. I ended up tearing my ACL after signing. Took that summer off. Came back the summer of my second year. The Mountaindale Lions had turned into the Catskill Cougars. I went back and played. Had a great summer. Won the championship. Signed again, and at the end of my third year, was going to play for a team called the Allentown Ambassadors. And just law school had kind of developed into my career, and instead of playing out the season, I went to Barbary review classes and took the bar. Okay, well, you've probably got a much better shot of being a lawyer than you do a ball player, to be honest with you. I'll tell you a funny story, John. I'm down in Florida the year after I graduated college, and I went down and caught up with my team. It was over spring break. A couple of scouts from the White Sox were there, and they said, "Wes, how you doing?" I said, "I'm great." They said, "What are you doing now?" I said, "Well, I'm about to go back to law school." And I looked up at them. I said, "Hey, do you have an opening for a left fielder or a right fielder?" And the guy said, "You'll make more money as a lawyer than you ever will as a baseball player, Wes." And that was it. That was the end of the conversation.
He was talking about skills as opposed to
yeah. Well, it was all right. I had a chance to play. I got to play the game for a little bit longer than a lot of people, and great memories from it. And I love having had the opportunity to do it.
That's fantastic. And you're still involved with Green Hornets up in Severna Park? I think I see you.
I do.
Facebook.
Mostly now it's Severna Park High School Falcons. That's where my youngest is now a freshman, so I have a freshman and junior at Severna Park. They've graduated out of Green Hornets and into Severna Park baseball and football, so I get to be a dad now and cheer my kids on and cheer a lot of kids that I've coached on, which is probably the best part of it.
We really want to talk about, too, was what it is that you do. You won your election 4 years ago to be the Anne Arundel County State's Attorney. And certainly in the recent news with the shooting at the Capitol Gazette, you've been in the news. You've been commenting on Jared Ramos and everything else that's going on there. And that I think everybody kind of knows that, okay, you shoot somebody and you go to jail, somehow you're going to deal with the state's attorney's office. But there's a lot more to that.
Sure. The funny thing is when I'm out and talking to people, there's a lot of confusion just because of the name state's attorney. I'm a state's attorney because we represent, me and the lawyers who work for me, we represent the laws of the state of Maryland. Most people commonly, what my position is commonly referred to as district attorney, because I only serve a jurisdiction. My jurisdiction is Anne Arundel County.
Okay.
So my authority as a prosecutor and any of the assistant state's attorneys that work for us are only in Anne Arundel County. None of my lawyers could walk over to Montgomery County and start a criminal case, not without special permission.
Right.
So that's the first thing. The second thing that I always tell people is, do you watch Law & Order? And when they say yes, I say, you know who Sam Waterston is? Yes, that's what I do. And everybody seems to get that.
That's the aha.
Yeah. And so, look, prosecutors, we are the criminal trial lawyers for the county. Any sort of crime that occurs, we get to work with the police. The police are our primary investigating body. We work with them to develop the case, develop all the evidence, and then we are responsible for organizing that evidence and presenting it to a judge or a jury so that we can secure a conviction. That is the primary function of what the lawyering part of being the state's attorney is.
Okay, so you're the guy on the other side of the table that, if I'm busted, you're the guy on the other side of the table.
Yep.
Okay, you say you're like the district attorney. Now,
Yes.
what is there a difference between a state's attorney and a district attorney other than terminology here in Maryland?
No,
Because that's the way we do things.
That is. It's just, no, I'm the state's attorney for Anne Arundel County. If you go to the Manhattan district attorney, everybody sort of understands Manhattan district. They would know what that means.
Okay.
Or if you're the Nassau County district attorney, everybody would understand that the county's district attorney limits themselves to one jurisdiction. The other way I can explain it is chief of police. Everybody sort of understands that the chief of police only exists inside of Anne Arundel County.
Right.
For me, I am the chief of the prosecutors.
Okay.
And so the jurisdiction that I serve is Anne Arundel County, and my responsibility as the state's attorney is the overseeing of all of the criminal prosecution that occurs here.
Okay, and you had mentioned that the police are your primary investigative arm.
Yep.
That means there's a secondary investigative arm. Do you do your own investigations, or?
We can help augment an investigation, but we rely on the police, whether it's Anne Arundel County Police, Annapolis City Police, the Maryland State Police, Department of Natural Resources Police. We have the transportation police agencies that we work with. They are, when I say primary investigating agency, I'm talking about they are out on the scene. They are doing the nitty-gritty, hardcore investigating. We have investigators in our office, but they are helping with getting people served, locating a witness to make sure that they can come to court. It's a little bit, they are not the primary investigating agency at all. They might serve a subpoena to get a document, but...
Okay, so the police are investigating the crime.
Correct.
And your investigators, for lack of a better word, in your office would be more investigating the build-up to make the case?
They would help us with any sort of case development in addition to what the police officers are doing. We rely on our police officers to do nearly every single thing in the case. We have investigators to help assist making sure we can get a case into trial.
What else does the state's attorney's office in general, not specific your position, but the office in the courthouse? And you guys are based out of Church Circle in Annapolis, right?
Yes, we actually have three geographic areas. We have the circuit courthouse, which is where all the felonies occur. That's 8 Church Circle.
And that's the only circuit court in Anne Arundel, right? Now,
correct.
Right?
That's the only circuit courthouse. We have 2 district courthouses. One is right in front of the Naval Academy Stadium, and then the second one is in Glen Burnie, and it's up on 648. So
do you have anything to do with district court?
Absolutely. I mean, every prosecutor, we have 52 prosecutors. They're split between the 3 courthouses. We are responsible for all of the misdemeanor prosecutions that occur, both in Annapolis and Glen Burnie, as well as any sort of jailable motor vehicle. So if you're certain motor vehicle crimes, instead of getting a ticket, you get what's called a must appear. Those must appears usually have a concurrent jail sentence. Driving while intoxicated is probably the most obvious one.
Right.
If you get arrested for driving while intoxicated and can go to jail, that investigation would come to a prosecutor, and a prosecutor would present that to the court.
Now, does the circuit court only handle felonies? Is that fair to say?
Their primary jurisdiction is felonies. Certain misdemeanors are brought up into the circuit court, and then certain misdemeanors can, by way of the jury trial prayer process, be brought into the circuit court.
Okay.
So in Maryland, any offense that carries more than 90 days, you are eligible to ask for a jury trial.
Which is only available in circuit court.
Correct. The district court is only a bench. It's only a judge.
Okay. And circuit court also does, and it's not your ballywick, but they also do divorces and family law as well?
They do divorces, family law, medical malpractice, slip and falls, car accidents, everything.
And that's something that you're not involved in?
Not at all.
Not unless there's somebody that was drinking and driving and did it, and there's a criminal aspect to a car accident or something.
Correct. But then we would have nothing to do with the civil case. We would strictly be responsible for the criminal prosecution.
I didn't realize that you had all those attorneys up in the other courts. I thought that was pretty much like a traffic court, for lack of a better words there.
No, there is traffic court. I mean, there's non-jailable. You get a speeding ticket and you want to contest it. You go in as the defendant, and I
may have been there once or twice. I don't.
And the judge will simply call the police officer to come up, and the judge will swear the police officer and ask him, what evidence do you have? So there's no prosecuting agency involved in it.
Right. And that typically is, in my experience, has been like retired judges that they call in to sometimes to do that. And it's my very first experience with that was I came loaded for bear to fight. But the first time I came down here, I was just absolutely amazed at this whole concept of pleading guilty with an excuse.
Right.
And I'm coming from Pennsylvania, and I'm like going, okay, what the hell is this? And you've got these guys going like, well, yeah, I was drinking a soda and it dropped on the floor, and I reached over to get it and stepped on the gas can or the gas, and like, okay, well, I'll cut your points in half and waive your fine. And I'm like going, this is amazing. And I presented my evidence and ended up getting off because I felt that the road was, I think it was a stop sign. I don't think it was properly marked, but I was just.
It wasn't red?
Huh?
It wasn't a red stop sign, John?
Actually, it was too low. It was too low. I brought in my manual on uniform traffic control devices. I found out that they use state or federal funds to maintain that road. And I threw that out there, and he says, well, okay. He might have just been nice, too. I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe you should have gone to law school instead of Annapolis.
The other big thing that you're involved in, and I've been in Anne Arundel County for about 20-some-odd years now, and I don't recall this being a thing in the past, but I also don't recall the problem being a thing in the past. Right. But you're out in front of the whole drug thing, the whole heroin, the opioid epidemic, and this is something that we weren't experiencing as a county, as a population 20 years ago. I'm sure it existed, and there were junkies and whatnot dying all the time. But to the extent that we are now, we've got record-setting year after year after year, and you're on the forefront of this. Is that something that you or your office had initiated, or is it just sort of or is that a function of the office that just sort of is now in the forefront?
So, a part of the way that I look at what my job is, John, and the core mission is really prosecuting cases, right? What we just talked about, working with police, investigating, building a case, and bringing it into a courtroom. But my agency really should be, and at least my belief is that we should be more than that. We are responsible, and I'm oftentimes approached and held responsible by the community for public safety. And so when you look at what long-term crime reduction is about, and really that's what, when we approached the opiate epidemic, it was about a long-term plan to help manage what was occurring in the county. There has to be a way to do that using the leverage of my office that's not just about jail. And so the two things that I really focus on in a comprehensive strategy is rehabilitation, education. So when you look at what my office does, it's three things. Prosecution, rehabilitation, and education. Because the prosecution side of it only touches that part of the community that's committed a crime. Okay. That's a small part of our community. The rehabilitation works with people who have maybe, on that fringe, in and out of a crime. They've been convicted. They're going to transition back into the community.
Right. Or they walk the line. And
we want to make sure that they get out of that cycle. And then, of course, the education piece is where you make a long-term gain in crime, because keeping people out of the system in the first place is the best way, in my opinion, to to keep the community safe, making good choices, staying out of the criminal justice system, not creating habits, patterns that will keep you coming back, maybe will handicap you down the road. That really is the big win for us. So using the leverage of my office, one of the developments that I created was a community outreach director. And John, of course, you remember that I was in multiple jurisdictions, having prosecuted homicides in a couple of jurisdictions, Baltimore City,
and Prince George's County.
Noting some of the lessons that I've learned about how important it is to have a community relationship, we brought in a community outreach director to help develop some of that connection to the community, which has paid huge dividends.
And what is his or her job? What does she do?
Her job is...
I'm starting to be sexist here.
Her job is multiple. She's helped develop some of the teaching programs that we've used. She has an approved curriculum teaching cyber safety and teen violence and sexting inside of our public school system. One of the great partnerships we've developed is working with our public schools. She has worked with, I'm sure you saw the governor's press release about the Handle with Care program.
Right.
My community outreach director has been on the forefront of developing that program with the police and with the school system to help us become a pilot agency in the state with that particular program.
Right. Well, one thing, I want to go off the rails a little bit here on the Handle with Care, and from what I understand, that is there may be an outside influence. Okay, somebody may have seen a shooting, or there may have been mom or dad may have gotten arrested for drug use, or whatever it may have been. There may have been some sort of a trauma that a child has witnessed or been a part of.
Correct.
And community volunteers, it might be somebody that your outreach coordinator in your office or somebody would notify the school and say, this is a Handle with Care.
Close. The way it works is when police or prosecutors understand that adverse childhood experience that you're talking about, that trauma, they can simply alert the school to handle a student with care. And what that does is it gives the school an idea that if there's a behavioral or an acting out issue, that there is a legitimate reason for that and should affect the way the school handles that child on that particular day.
Instance. Now, is that's I'm going to say an anonymous thing. I mean, they say this child is a Handle with Care child. This is not, he just saw his mother get arrested or anything like that. It's just, the school does not need to know. They just need to know that there is something that may affect
behavior on that particular day or in the ensuing days. And that gives them the opportunity to manage the student properly without creating a circumstance that puts them into a further, I mean, we don't want to compound an issue.
Sure, yeah. I can see some kid getting suspended because of a smart mouth real easily.
No, the reality is, John, once the school is informed that a child is part of, has had this inference and they're notified that it's a Handle with Care situation, the school can implement their trauma-informed care protocols. And it's a
good program.
It's a great program because, again, and when you look at it from, it's a non-traditional thing for a state's attorney's office to be involved in, but when you look at why, it makes it's perfectly relevant. If I can keep kids coming out of the juvenile justice system or working through that because the school understands what's going on, that's fantastic for me.
So you're working with the schools? You're working with the police?
Yep.
Obviously, you're working internally on your own there.
Yep.
You've got the Not My Child program, which is not a program out of the state's attorney's office, but it's a countywide program.
It's part of the collaboration that I have with the county executive's office. When he took over, one of the first things he did was bring in all of the community stakeholders, from schools to mental health agencies to the state's attorney's office, law enforcement, police, and brought them all together and said, okay, how do we tackle this as a county? And I think one of the, I'm going to say, brilliance of his insight is the first time I think you've seen in a while a lot of the agencies crossing barriers to tackle a problem. One of the collaborations that came out of this was the Not My Child program. It was designed to bring this message into the community, again, recognizing that for a long-term change, we have to change the way people think about the problem. And bring a level of awareness about unsecured opiate pills, why they're so dangerous. You know, can you use something different than a Percocet for a wisdom tooth removal, and generating that level of teaching, and then being able to have the resources to bring it around the county. And I think the county executive's idea about the Not My Child tour. I'm going to tell you it's a tour because we've made 100 stops around the county.
Do you have a T-shirt?
No, not yet.
Yeah,
We've talked about it. We've talked about it. So again, relating back, Carol, Ms. Perico, my community outreach director, was able to take that idea and then using the relationships with the schools, she was able to help start that program in the schools where it was myself, Jen Corbin, Mandy Larkins from Pathways at the time, bringing that program down into the 7th and 8th grade level and the high school students. So
I believe that. Yeah, I'm divorced, and one of the things my ex-wife and I used to fight about was when I would tell my kids when they were 3 and 4, like, when you're old and able to drink and you get into a situation, I want you to be able to call me. And she used to be, you're encouraging them to drink. I'm like, no, I'm not. I said, hopefully I'm encouraging them to call me.
Right.
And I think that when you say you're educating down in the lower middle school or even perhaps elementary school, I think that's a good thing that you obviously do it appropriately, but to get this thought in here that there is help, that there is a way out.
And it's funny, John, one of the strategies that we talk about all the time is exactly what you just mentioned. Having a code word with your parents that allows you to get their help, no questions asked.
Right.
And the parents really, when we talk to parents and students, we talk to the parents about, listen, you should reward or, positively respond to this effort that your child is saying, hey, get me out of this potentially difficult situation. We talk to the kids about letting your parents know that they can blame, they can blame the parent. They can do anything that they can to save face for themselves. But we want to create an idea where they can get themselves out and extract themselves safely.
Get to safety.
Yeah.
Well, it's if you see something, say something.
Sure.
Type of thing. And did you hear about the shooting threat at Broadneck today?
No, not yet.
There was a shooting threat at Broadneck High School, and they saw that somebody was going to shoot up BHS. It turned out it was a school in Georgia.
Right.
But again, the 2 students came to the administration who went to the police, who quick did the investigation. They found out this was in Georgia. There had already been an arrest by probably the time it got up here. But the school sent home a letter, and they were praising the kids for coming.
Correct.
Thankfully, it was nothing to worry about. I would say nothing to worry about, but it was certainly something to investigate. That's a really good indicator that the student that is getting to these kids. Hey, if I see something, I need to say something. My own daughter was at an underage drinking party, and she called me on, I think it was like Good Friday evening or something like that when she was 18. And can you come pick me up? And I was like, absolutely.
Yep.
Doesn't mean you're not in trouble. I said, but you're just not in trouble right yet.
Well, we talk about that all the time. And why I think Anne Arundel County is such a great place is the level of interagency commitment to one another. And John, there's no better place that you can see the collaboration than the Safe Stations program. In that instance, having my office involved and what we've been able to do with the police and the firefighters and really county mental health in unlocking the barriers for treatment you're talking about 1,100 people in 18 months who have.
And this is the Safe Stations.
In the Safe Stations program, sure. I mean, it's with close to 80% of them getting connected to treatment, 63% in long-term treatment. It's been
and this is all about the people that want to receive treatment.
Absolutely.
It's not the guy that's going up to wherever to get their latest fix or to sell or anything like this. This is the person who says, okay, I'm over my head.
Yep. And
I don't know what to do.
Right.
And I think that as any number of cops across the country have said, you can't arrest your way out of it.
No. We have to use, as you've seen over the last 3 years, our prosecution has been incredibly strong on violent offenders, drug dealers, those who are out looking to harm people either through their actions with a weapon or their actions with a drug. We've devoted a tremendous amount of resources to being a trial-ready group that's willing to take these cases to trial and convict the worst offenders.
Right. Well, I know that you've had some setbacks on that. I know you've taken some of the people on manslaughter charges that were dealing the drugs. I know that the judiciary hasn't really gone in your favor on that, but it's again, it was one of those. I remember writing about it, saying this was the third one in the state of Maryland that Anne Arundel County brought forward. So it's sort of been untested.
And I think you've seen over the last 4 years, we're not afraid to try hard cases. We do the best that we pull together the best cases that we can develop. The great thing about the way my prosecutors work with the police force here is that we're getting prosecutors in at the ground level. Again, this is another difference that has come about in the last 4 years. My prosecutors being out on scene with detectives, learning about the case, seeing how the evidence fits in context so that they can communicate better to a judge or jury what's happening in that particular crime. But we've taken some pretty hard cases to trial. We had that no body conviction. We've had a couple of really difficult cases that most likely wouldn't have been tried 4 years ago. And so that really is our core mission.
Well, I don't want specifics. I know you can't give them to me, but on the Capitol Gazette shootings, you said that your prosecutors will go out with it. I mean, at what point did your office officially become involved in that investigation?
I think when I spoke to Major Cramph, there were like 8 cars had responded to the scene.
Okay.
That's how early we were involved with it.
So now, was your staff actually in there with them working with the police the whole time along, or I'm just on a case that's that huge and notorious. I mean, do you just wait for the police to say, okay, well, here's what we've got, go for it?
No. Any crime that involves the death of a human being in Anne Arundel County, my prosecutors will be out on scene as quickly as possible. We clearly weren't going in with the police. They had their responsibility. I mean, they did a fantastic job of securing the scene, ensuring that everybody was removed safely that they could, limiting that case.
Right, the risk was mitigated.
Right. Incredible job by our police officer, all the agencies. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't just one, it was every agency involved. As soon as that scene was secure and the police officers and the detectives walked myself and 4 other of my prosecutors through so that we could help see the scene as they had secured it. That gives us as prosecutors an understanding of what that crime scene looks like, how evidence that we might only have seen on a piece of paper, how it really relates to something, to each other, so that down the road, my responsibility is to communicate that crime scene to a judge or a jury.
Okay, so there's a lot of emotion involved in there. I mean, I can't imagine that this was not an emotional visit there by any stretch. But I mean, at this point, and you are going to personally be prosecuting this case as well. So, I mean, that's all part of I don't want to say the trick, but of the secret to the secret sauce for the state's attorney's office is to get that passion. I mean, you could sit there and flip through a thing. Victim A was in, at this location and this looking up or looking down, and we feel that he went out door 3 and whatnot. But I mean, you've got the ability now to paint that picture to a jury, presumably, or to a judge of exactly what took place at any crime scene.
Right. Our burdens are a little bit different. Police officers work with probable cause and enough evidence to arrest somebody, to bring charges. My responsibility and prosecutor's responsibility has to take that one more step, which is what we call a burden of persuasion. I have to persuade 12 people to agree beyond a reasonable doubt that this person committed a crime. And having that context and having the flavor of what happened at the crime scene really helps us in reaching that particular burden. I know it's a little bit of legal speak, maybe a little bit of a nebulous concept, or just sort of like vapor in the air, to tell you the truth, John. But we have to convince 12 people to feel comfortable saying you're guilty. And that's just more than seeing a piece of evidence in some place.
Okay, so let's say I bring out a gun and I shoot somebody, they don't die. I get away.
Yep.
Okay, the police do their investigation and they develop me as a suspect. Okay, you're not involved at this point, perhaps, or maybe you are, but you may not be. The police say, okay, well, John Fernay did it.
Okay.
They come to you, right?
Yes.
To get and this is another aspect of your office. You authorize my arrest?
Not exactly. Police are completely independently able to go and swear out charges, and routinely that's the way that this happens.
And when you say swear charge, that goes before a judge?
That goes before a commissioner.
Okay.
They fill out a sworn statement that says these are the facts, these are the charges that are supported by these facts. Mr. Commissioner, I want you to issue an arrest warrant.
And a commissioner is sort of a judge-lite?
Quasi-judicial officer that's...
What are the qualifications for a commissioner?
I believe you have to have graduated a high school in Maryland. That's what the qualifications are.
So that's my own little personal beef on the whole catch and release.
We do have some. We have a number of commissioners who are lawyers. They're very well trained. They go through their training. And no slight on the lawyers. You asked what the qualifications are, but they have a manual, a handbook. They do a pretty good job at getting it right. The commissioner is actually one of the agencies that were essential in helping the Safe Stations program. Yep. Right. So, I mean, they do as good a job as they can. Obviously, as a lawyer, I look at it a little differently sometimes, but there are plenty of lawyers who are commissioners. So they evaluate charges and just determine whether there is probable cause to file charges.
Okay.
Depending on the nature of the charge, the case would either go to the district court if it's a misdemeanor, or it would then come to the circuit court.
Okay, so now I've shot somebody. They survived. They went to the commissioner. They got an arrest warrant. They found me. They brought me in. I'm being held for a while. They may release me or whatever. The next thing is it always go to a grand jury?
No. If it's a felony case, if we want to bring it to the circuit court, we have two avenues. We can have a hearing, what's called a preliminary hearing in front of a district court judge.
Okay.
And the district court judge will then decide based on what evidence we present, whether the case is worthy of going to the circuit court, or we can take it to a grand jury and indict it. We predominantly use the grand jury to indict cases.
And then once I'm indicted, that basically says that they believe that there's 12 people believe that there's enough evidence that I committed a crime. It
actually is at least 12. The grand jury is 23 folks. They have to have a majority vote to indict a case, to issue an indictment.
Okay, so if an indictment is not issued, what happens?
Then
I get a cab ride home?
No, it depends on what the case is. If there are misdemeanor charges, the only thing that would happen would be the misdemeanor charges would go back to the district court and you wouldn't get indicted on the felonies.
Okay.
Because that's what the grand jury would be passing on.
Okay.
Predominantly, if they said there's no evidence for any of the cases, yes, that would end the case.
Okay.
If they said there's no evidence for the felonies, then your misdemeanor charges could still be heard down in the district court.
Okay, so then they indict me, then I'm either held or released on bail or bond or whatever, and then it goes through the whole scheduling thing.
Correct.
And I can opt, as a defendant, I can opt for a judge or a jury trial.
Correct. So the process, and if you're, I know the first question was in terms of the Capitol Gazette shooting, what you're going to see play out. We would have a status conference where we'll set up a schedule of events that are going to occur. My office is legally obligated to provide discovery. And what discovery is all of the information that we gather in our investigation.
You got to show your hand.
We show our hand. We turn over our playbook to the defense. The defense will then we have what's normally called a pretrial motions area where we're basically asking the judge to rule on the admissibility of pieces of evidence.
Okay. And that would be, again, jumping down to the Capitol, where you would ask to have the addresses of survivors suppressed.
That's really part of our discovery process, trying to protect a witness's address. And then, just the motions hearing would be more like, hey, judge, we don't want a particular statement to be in front of the jury because it was illegally obtained, or we don't want a particular piece of evidence to come into this court case because it wasn't properly obtained. And so we litigate those particular motions, and the judge makes his or her rulings, and then we have an idea of what's going to happen, what evidence is admissible in trial.
Okay.
At that point, a defendant could elect to take a judge trial or a jury trial. Then we present the case.
Okay, so it's almost like a funnel there. You've sort of grabbed everything up to the top, and then it just works its way down into the final verdict there.
Yes.
What's the secret thing that we don't know that the state's attorney's office does? I mean, do you guys have like raging parties or something on Friday afternoons that we don't know about?
No.
I mean, you've got a secret garage. We do know about that.
We don't have a secret garage. I think our garage is tied in with all the rest of the officials that work in the courthouse, so it's nothing secret about it. No, we have. I'll tell you what I think that is missed in the office is we have a tremendous amount of camaraderie and teamwork. You've got a lot of people pulling in the direction to serve a community. And so each and every one of them recognize when they walk in the door that our ultimate goal is to take somebody through the worst part of their lives, whether a violent crime occurred to them, and then walk them through, be a voice for them in the criminal justice process and bring them to the other side of it. And the people that are doing this are very committed to that. So we have a tremendous amount of camaraderie, and that creates a collegial atmosphere that I think works for people. You see a lot of good friendships that are born out of it. You have people who prosecuted 20 years ago that there's a bond of being a prosecutor that once you get, it's very hard to sever.
And you've got how many people that work in the state's attorney's office? I know you said you had like 50 lawyers.
About 52 lawyers. We have a total of about 120 people, give or take. doing split between the 3 locations, Glen Burnie, Annapolis, and the Annapolis District Court.
Okay. And as the state's attorney, are you paid by the state or the county?
I'm a county employee, but I'm an independent, it's very strange. I'm an independent constitutional state office. However, I am assigned to this jurisdiction, so my funding comes through the county by virtue of the Constitution. The county's directed to fund us.
So if you had a legitimate need for, say we had just some gigantic crime wave that rolls through here, and you have the need to have 50 more prosecutors, the county needs to find a way to fund that? I'm just curious. I know the Board of Elections is similar. It's mandated by the state. And I know Joe Torre told me at one point that when I tell them what I need, they have to write the check.
The language is that the council is supposed to fund what is reasonable and necessary for me to run the office. So
you've got to make that pitch.
Right. It's a balance. They understand what's reasonable and necessary. I go down and present generally evidence-based ideas. The council has been fantastic. And in fact, the office hadn't grown at all in the time before I took office in 2014. And we've been able to add more prosecutors so that we could attack certain pieces of the criminal problem.
And that's just reallocating resources and sliding people around. And
we're part of the county executive's larger budget, so we present our ideas to the county executive, and the county executive produces and allocates a certain amount of money to our office, and it's presented to the council, who passes on it. I mean, I have almost no independent control over the amount of money that we're given, other than going down and trying to persuade the 7 members of the council that this is why it's important.
You need some more. So nothing really secret, nothing really cool, no little insider tidbits or anything like that?
No, it's a good office. We do a tremendous amount of good work for the community. I'm really proud of the people that work for me, and I'm proud of being a part of that team. We have added some awesome people over the last 4 years, and I think the secret to the office is the individual dedication to making justice happen in the county. Like, that's really the secret. The secret to safe stations is a person like Jen Corbin and Steve Thomas, who devote an incredible amount of their lives to seeing people get healthy.
Right. The
secret to justice in Anne Arundel County are the folks that come in, that buy into what we're doing, and that work their tails off to make this place as safe as we can.
Final question. What's the measure of success for Wes Adams as a state's attorney? How do you know you're doing a good job?
When someone walks up to me and says, hey, 2 weeks ago I walked in and your prosecutors did a great job. They were prepared. They were honest. They went to bat for me, and they did a great job, and they shake my hand. When someone walks up to me and says, Mr. Adams, I graduated from your drug court 2 years ago, and then just hugs me. When I walk down the street, I'm door knocking in Crofton before the primary, 2 young men came up, and I was near my car so they could see my son, they could see my magnet. And they're like, you're Mr. Adams, right? And I'm like, yeah. And they said, I heard you speak, you were in our school the other day. And I talked to these 2 kids just out on the street for, about 10, 15 minutes. And, it went from the first 2 minutes of talking about my cyber safety presentation to who they played basketball for and who their coach was, and making these connections with 2 13-year-olds that I know that means if I can resonate with those guys in the long term, one day they're going to get to a point and they're going to say, I remember Wes Adams, he spoke to me. And he said, don't do this. I'm not going to do it. That, to me, is the measure of success, John.
And that was Wes Adams.
That was very enlightening.
Yeah, I had fun with that one. I really did. I mean,
he's a good dude. I like him. I mean, we're not making an endorsement either way, but he's fun to talk to.
He is. He's down to earth. He's approachable. He's really damn tall.
Yeah, he's a tall guy, right?
He's ducking in.
He won a basketball player. He's a baseball player.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, speaking of sports, real quickly, I just want to give a shout out to Scotty Mack from the Annapolis podcast, Gene Deems from Maryland DNR, Teresa, my girlfriend, and myself and Ray Hoffman. We did the Lifeline 100 bicycle.
Oh, that's right. You guys all did. I saw it on Facebook
last weekend, and we did the 30-mile ride, and it was great. I felt bad for Gene. He rented a bike from Pedal Pushers, so it was like the Pee Wee Herman bike.
Oh, I saw him today. I forgot to ask him about that.
It was no speeds.
He said goodbye to me on Friday. He's like, well, you might not see me again. I'm like,
yeah, that's true. That's true. We were all worried about it. It was like,
because he's like, I haven't ridden a bike forever. I'm like, well, let's ease into it with the 30
that's what it
mile
was.
ride.
We were all like, okay, well, somebody hang back with Gene for a while. And then we took turns hanging back with Gene for a while. Because, I mean, and it wasn't because Gene couldn't do it. It was because of the bike was a one-speed bike. So, but he did it. And
had a little horn with like the little rubber ball on it.
Not quite that bad, but it was
the sparklers that are coming out the handlebars.
But no, he did it. And Scotty Mac almost did it. He ended up finishing it in an Uber. But
I would have started in an Uber,
which is hysterical. He had a wipeout up in what's the mall up in Glen Burnie, the Marley Station Mall, behind the Marley Station Mall, and messed up his brakes and skinned his cap up pretty big. So he called for an Uber, and I just thought that was kind of amusing. I've got a picture of Scott getting at the finish line, getting out of an Uber,
doing it in class.
It's like the It's like the Boston Marathon woman that cheated.
I don't like biking. Oh, that was Rosie Ramirez, something like that.
Yeah.
Oh shit, I'm gonna remember this after this. It was Rosie.
Was it a New York Marathon or the Boston?
No, it was Boston Marathon. She took the subway. Yeah.
But yeah, no, the Lifeline 100 was a lot of fun. It was sort of a bucket list thing. We may do something a little bit more than that.
Yeah, I don't like biking. I mean, I'll bike like in my neighborhood and stuff like that, but I don't have the desire ever to put on the Lycra and the helmet and go. No. It's not my thing.
Well, there, I totally got off track there with Wes Adams, and I thought I did a good job keeping him apolitical.
Yeah, he did. He was able to break it down, so I have a better understanding. I got to admit, I still don't understand it completely. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'll have to see next time I get arrested how it actually progresses, but I understand basically how it goes.
Right. There was one question that I wish I had asked him that came up over this weekend that we were trying to discuss is like on a grand jury, when they're indicting somebody, does the grand jury know who it is, or is there anonymity to it? Because I think anonymity would be a good thing. You know, hey, I've got a 40-year-old black guy or a 30-year-old white guy, as opposed to who it is, or maybe even get rid of the race or anything like that. And just so the grand jury is presented with nothing but evidence. What's
the old expression? The grand jury can indict a ham sandwich. I think that's what it is.
If they have, argue.
They can indict. I mean, the power they have is pretty amazing. They can indict anyone for anything. Mm-hmm. I think.
Then of course it's got to be proven in a court in front of a judge or jury. But
you're impaneled for like months when you're on a grand jury, aren't you? Like 6 months?
I don't think it's quite that long.
How many people are on it? Like it's like 30?
I think he said 19.
19?
I think he said 19. So it's interesting there. So we didn't get political.
Speaking of political, I actually saved this for the podcast, and I didn't read anything about it, and I'm being 100% honest right here. Explain to me this whole Pittman shoe ethics thing.
Oh, okay. Stuart Pittman has been critical of Steve Shue and his development stances out in Crofton. And he has gone out campaigning saying that Steve has not been very forthcoming with his positions and his developer money and everything else that he's accepted for his campaign for the enclaves at Crofton, which is a big development right there on, I want to say it's not Ritchie Highway, it's Crane Highway at that point, Route 3. So Steve Shue turned around and addressed the Crofton residents via an email database that is county owned.
Oh.
And it was on a county letterhead from the county executive saying that he wants to correct misinformation that's out there, which at that point is not a big issue. But then he named Stuart Pittman, being said by my opponent.
Right.
And that my opponent is where Pittman says it turns it into an election thing.
Right.
Shue's camp is sitting there saying, well, he never asked for money. He never asked for a vote. He said, I just want to explain this. Pittman did file an ethics complaint, and the Ethics Commission has 45 days to act on it, which will be after the election.
Yeah.
But they can act quicker, and I think they will. And actually, just the other day, Dirk Hare, who's the chairman of the Maryland GOP, he's also the husband of Jessica Hare, who's running for county council in District 7 as a Republican, sent out a sort of a what's the peace offering? What's it called? A palm?
Broken arrow?
Nah, I don't know. Sent out a peace offering to Pittman saying that, and disclosed that Pittman had his own ethics violation filed against him 2 weeks ago. And he made it seem like this was sort of like tit for tat. And what Pittman's was basically that he had sent out many emails for a period of months that didn't have an authority line on the bottom, which everybody agrees is a really just sort of a non-problem problem. And, obviously, Shue thinks that his thing is a non-problem problem. So we'll see what happens, because Dirk Harris said, well, look, Shue, you withdraw. I don't even know whether it was Shue that was, but we will offer to, or not offer, we'll have the ethics complaint against Pittman mitigated. We'll say no fines, and we'll just sort of try to do our best to make it go away and not object to it and say, hey, we're cool with it.
So just offsetting penalties at that point.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens. I mean, but it's really kind of a big nothing as far as I'm concerned, except
what happens? I mean, what's the worst could happen? A fine?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the damage is done.
Then who cares?
I don't think it's any more I think it's a little bit more up and up than some of the sleazy mailers we saw the last time around.
There's a lot. I mean, I know it's always been this bad. Like, you can go back and look at them like the turn of the century, and they have like in the archives, they have some of the posters and everything that are really bad. Mm-hmm. It just seems maybe there was a lull there for a while. It's just gotten really bad the last few years.
Well, hey, and also go back. I want to pimp at&nbsp.net. Go back. I'll pin it to the top, but I've got a post which has all sorts of important election dates and links and whatnot there. The Maryland League of Women Voters has a great voter, apolitical, nonpartisan, non-biased database that you can see where every candidate and wherever you live stands on the positions and how you should vote. It's got the deadlines for registering to vote, for early voting dates, where the early voting locations are, when you can change your things. So go check that out. I'll have that pinned at at&nbsp.net.
I can't wait for this election to be over. Just in general, the national elections, the midterms. I am just done. I'm
kind of over it too. And what else were you talking about? You were talking about
the council, the polystyrene ban.
Oh, that's right. The county executive vetoed that. The county council passed it, and the county executive vetoed it, I believe.
The city passed it, didn't they? The city.
Well, this is on the county level, so it died in the county level, but the city offered the same one because when the county did it, Rob Savage, I believe, had sponsored it coming in the city,
right.
And that continued to move forward, and that passed earlier this week. And there's going to be a ban now, and it'll be interesting to see how the restaurateurs all partake of that.
It'd also be like the stores, like Growls and Giant and Safeway, and everyone who has the soup bars and everything. And I don't know. It sounds. I think the argument was that the stuff doesn't break down, and it gets in the oceans in little bits and pieces. The fish eat it, and they become sick. And
and from what I understand,
I guess it's good.
I understand it's dirt cheap to manufacture.
Yeah, I'd imagine
as opposed to something. And there was some people that testified saying that this nothing that can keep anything as warm as the polystyrene.
I keep one of those. I got it at Sam's Club. It's one of those insulated bags, like the big ones. So when I go to the store and I have frozen stuff, I put it in it. And when I get pizza and Thai food and stuff like that, I put it in the bag. Keeps it toasty warm.
Yeah,
everyone's gotta get that.
I'm not really upset about it one way or another.
Yeah, I don't really care. I should care, but I don't.
I
feel the same way with plastic bags. I ban them or don't ban. I don't care really.
We'll get used to it.
Yeah, it's fine.
It's probably not too much different than when we banned smoking in the restaurants.
I was just thinking about that. I was thinking because I was smoking at the time when they did that out in California because I was living in the Southwest, and we went to LA back in '95.
Wait, I thought you lived in Montgomery County.
Born and bred. But we went out to LA, and they were the first people to ban smoking in restaurants. That was like 95, and bars. And so we were out in LA, and we went to the bar, and everyone was outside smoking. I just thought it was crazy. And other places were talking about doing it. And I'm like, you know what? This is going to fall flat on its face. And now that I'm an ex-smoker, I'm good. I still go to Pennsylvania, and they still smoke in the bars up there, and I hate it.
The bars down here in Maryland actually picked up business when they got rid of the smoking. And Pennsylvania's got a weird law because they've got smaller bars that maybe they don't serve food or they only have so many people. They still allow smoking in them. Because I remember I was in one in someplace just over the line, and it was like, whoa. I go up there a lot because my in-laws are up there, and they said, you want to go to the bar? I'm like, no, I don't. I love bars. I'm a big bar person. But no.
Can you imagine what Ebb Tide would be like, or Davis's back when they could smoke?
Oh, yeah. Oh, God, no.
You can just see like that blue-gray haze just hovering over the bar.
You walk in and you get home and you take your shirt off and it's like, oh, this is disgusting. Throw it right into the...
Yeah, that's the whole reason I quit. Well, that and cancer. But the smell first.
Yeah. So it's coming up down the line. We're not going to be able to have polystyrene at Annapolis City restaurants.
And no bags to put them in anyway.
Yeah.
So you just have to keep your soup cupped in your hands.
There you go.
All right.
Hey, what are we doing next week? Oh, we're doing the Commons.
Yes, that's right. We are doing the Commons.
Yeah. Yeah. We talked to the people at the Commons where we often record.
Mm-hmm.
Great location right there on West Street across from the Lighthouse Bistro. And I got a couple other things in the works. I just don't have them finalized yet.
Yeah, me too. We'll surprise each other.
So basically, we don't know what the hell we're doing, but
we never did.
Make sure you come back in on Thursday and see what it is.
Yeah. In the meantime, you can go to Facebook and find us. We have a group and we have a page there, the Maryland Crabs. So you can follow the page, join the group. We're also on Twitter at MD Crabs Podcast. Even see I'm off Twitter and I can still remember that, although I do cheat.
Yeah.
I kind of look at the trends, which is not nearly as fun. That's sort of like giving up candy and eating like Tootsie Rolls.
You should go back on it.
I can't. I was just very unhappy when I was on it. But you got to subscribe to us. So subscribe, go whatever you listen to your podcasts on, go into the podcast and actually subscribe. Just don't listen on Facebook or on YouTube, where you can also find us. And then, of course, there's John's Daily Briefing on Annapolis, which I do listen to every day. It's a great one.
Yeah, and rate us when you get to the places.
Rate the hell out of us.
You can give us a 5-star rating or a 4-star rating or whatnot. And listen to Scott McMullen all in the Annapolis podcast.
Yep.
He's had a couple good episodes lately. He had a really powerful one with Jessie Dunleavy, who lost her son to an overdose. And that was a really powerful one.
That's sad.
And Scott's got some really good stuff there. Josh Cohen.
Yep. More power to you. Yeah.
Look at that. We're sounding like the guys we have. Like, more power to you.
And Red Maryland, those are our friends up there, our Red friends. And they do a lot of live stuff on Facebook, too. They do a lot of live feeds. So.
They do. Although Brian is not very well liked right here because he wrote a real nasty article about the bicycle lane in the Capitol. Yeah, he wasn't nice to our
people. Did not like
mayor.
them. Yeah, that I kind of agreed with him on some of the stuff.
But our mayor's in Australia for a couple of weeks, so it's okay.
Yeah, it doesn't exist when he's there.
And that's one thing I like about Gavin is you can be very critical with Gavin Buckley, and it just rolls right off.
He can take it.
I'm sure it affects him, but I mean, it's very easy to we're going to try it, we're going to move on, and we're going to. He's a difficult person to be mad at.
Yeah, I mean, all our mayors, well, most of our mayors, they were all really nice people, whether you agreed with them or not.
That's true. So check us out, rate us, do all that kind of stuff. If you've got suggestions, email us, and we will see you next Thursday.
Next Thursday.
This has been the Maryland Crabs Podcast with Tim Hamilton and John Fernay. Sure to follow them in all the regular places, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and online at themarylandcrabs.com. Take a moment to rate us on iTunes. Now, get the hell out of my kitchen. Seriously, go!
You're still here? It's over. Go home.